You've seen the videos by now. An 18-wheeler was hauling down Interstate 45 between Dallas and Houston, a full Freightliner cab, and a full trailer, 80,000 pounds, moving at 65 miles an hour. And nobody was inside it. Not in the driver's seat, not in the sleeper berth, not anywhere. The truck was making the trip alone. So how is that legal? How does it actually know where the road is? And what happens at 65 miles an hour with 40 tons behind it if anything goes wrong? The surface answer is 2 words: the Aurora Driver. But that does not actually explain anything, because 3 different things are working at the same time inside that cab right now, and almost nobody outside the industry understands which one matters most. And the answer connects to something you almost certainly bought this week without thinking about it. This is not a tech demo. This is a $906 billion industry quietly handing over the wheel on the busiest freight corridor in Texas, a stretch of Interstate 45 that moves close to half of all truck freight in the state. It launched on April 27th, 2025. But let's start with what everyone gets wrong about how this truck actually sees the road. The first thing people assume is that the truck watches the road with cameras, like a Tesla. That's wrong, and it's wrong in a way that matters. The Aurora Driver does use cameras, but they are not the primary sense. The primary sense is something called first light Lidar, a custom sensor that fires invisible laser pulses at 1,550 nanometers outside the visible spectrum and eye-safe at full power. But here is what makes it different from every previous LiDAR system. It is a frequency-modulated continuous wave LiDAR. It does not just measure how long the light takes to come back, it measures the frequency shift of every returning photon. That shift, by way of the Doppler effect, tells the truck not only where every object is, but how fast it is moving, instantaneously on the first reading. The first time the truck sees you, it already knows your speed. The current generation sees 450 meters. The next generation is engineered for 1,000. Aurora has publicly demonstrated detecting a single pedestrian on a highway shoulder at over 400 meters, nearly the length of 4 football fields. At highway speeds, the truck covers 30 meters every second. A single misaligned milliradian in the calibration would offset its perception by a full highway lane 400 meters away. So the system recalibrates itself in real time every time it leaves a terminal. For context, the Stanford team that won the 2005 DARPA Grand Challenge, the race that started this entire industry, used 5 spinning LiDAR units bolted to the roof of a Volkswagen Touareg and saw maybe 30 meters reliably. The Aurora Driver sees 15 times further and knows the velocity of every dot it touches. That's the perception layer. That's also where most people stop, because it feels like the whole answer. But seeing is the easy part. Knowing where every car and lane marker is in 3 dimensions is not the same thing as keeping a 40-ton vehicle on the highway when something inside the truck physically fails. That is only the perception layer. The real engineering is what happens when something goes wrong. Here is the part the press releases bury in footnotes. Every system inside that truck exists twice. The steering is not 1 drive-by-wire actuator. It is 2, running in parallel. If one fails mid-corner, the worst possible moment, the second takes the wheel without the truck noticeably wavering. Braking is redundant. Power is redundant. The onboard computers are redundant. The cooling system is redundant. Even the cellular links back to Aurora Operations Center are redundant. Multiple networks, multiple antennas, multiple paths. There is no single point of failure inside that cab. This is the part of SAE Level 4 that nobody outside the safety community explains properly. Level 4 does not mean the software is so good, no human is needed. It means the system itself is its own backup. That redundancy is not a feature. It is the entire definition. And this connects to something on your grocery shelf right now, but we will get to that. The stakes are not abstract. 80,000 pounds at 65 miles per hour has a stopping distance close to 2 football fields. A single failed steering actuator on a curve in Texas at 3 in the morning is not a fender bender. It is a closed interstate. It is a body count. It is the kind of incident that ends the entire industry before it starts. So the engineering is built around a single principle. If anything critical fails, the truck commits to what's called a minimum risk maneuver. It identifies the safest possible pullover location inside its own remaining braking distance, executes a controlled lane change, comes to a stop on the shoulder, and triggers a set of cab-mounted warning beacons, bright, flashing, visible from hundreds of meters back. Aurora ran 2 independent studies, including one with the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute, testing whether those beacons actually warned approaching drivers. The data said yes, better than the alternative, in fact. But here is the part that changes the story. The alternative the data was measured against is a federal regulation from 1972 that requires a human driver to walk out of the cab and physically place 3 reflective triangles around the truck. There is no human in the cab. Aurora applied for an exemption. The federal government denied it on December 26, 2024. So the company sued. It was a lawsuit against the federal agency that regulates trucking, while simultaneously preparing to launch the first commercial driverless trucking service in U.S. history. But the real reason this all happened in 2025 and not in 2015 like Washington expected goes back 21 years. March 13, 2004. The Mojave Desert. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency offers a $1 million prize to any team that can build a vehicle capable of driving itself 150 miles from Barstow, California to Primm, Nevada. More than 100 teams register. 15 qualify. The race starts, and it ends in spectacular failure. Not a single vehicle finishes. The best performance comes from Carnegie Mellon Red Team with a converted Humvee called Sandstorm. It travels 7.32 miles before getting hung up on a rock. The second-place vehicle catches fire. That is the entire ancestor of every self-driving system on a public road today. The best autonomous vehicle on Earth in 2004 could not get past mile 7. DARPA doubled the prize to $2 million and tried again 19 months later. On October 8, 2005, Stanford's Stanley, a modified Volkswagen Touareg with 5 spinning Lidar units on the roof, completed a 132-mile course in 6 hours, 53 minutes, 58 seconds. The world's autonomous trucking industry was born that morning in a desert with a station wagon. The original goal was buried in Section 220 of the fiscal year 2001 National Defense Authorization Act, a congressional mandate that demanded 1/3 of U.S. military ground combat vehicles be unmanned by 2015. It missed by a decade. The civilian industry missed even longer. And the rules that govern American trucking missed completely. Federal Regulation 49 CFR, Section 393.95F, written in 1972, requires that whenever a commercial vehicle is stopped on the shoulder, the driver must walk out and place 3 reflective triangles in a specific pattern within 10 minutes. Aurora pointed out the obvious: there is no driver to walk out, and it proposed cab-mounted beacons instead. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration denied the exemption on December 26, 2024. Aurora sued on January 10, 2025. The first commercial driverless trucking service in United States history launched on April 27, 2025, and active litigation was running against the federal agency that regulates it. Therefore, the answer to why now, why Texas, why Interstate 45 is not really a technology answer at all. It is an economics answer, and that lands in your daily life in a way you almost certainly have not noticed. Close to half of all truck freight in Texas moves along Interstate 45 between Dallas and Houston. Aurora ran a supervised pilot on that exact corridor for 3 years, 280,000 autonomous miles, 1,400 customer loads, 100% on-time performance before going driverless. That's not a demo. That's a freight company. And the reason this matters to you sits in your pantry, your medicine cabinet, and the chain restaurant you ate at last weekend. McLean Company, a Berkshire Hathaway subsidiary that distributes food to convenience stores, mass merchants, and chain restaurants, is now running fully driverless Aurora trucks for commercial deliveries in Texas. The food in your gas station's microwave aisle, the supplies behind the counter at the fast food drive-thru, the perishable middle-mile haul. Hirschbach Motor Lines signed a memorandum to buy 500 Aurora-powered trucks. Volvo Autonomous Solutions extended the route to Dallas and Oklahoma City, another 200 miles, 5 days a week. Why is the industry moving this fast? Because U.S. trucking generated approximately $906 billion in 2024, and it is running short. The American Trucking Associations estimates a driver shortage between 60,000 and 80,000. The Bureau of Labor Statistics revealed in February of 2026 that 122,000 trucking positions had vanished from payrolls since October of 2022. The average driver is 46 years old. Long-haul turnover routinely exceeds 90%. The pipeline isn't refilling, so the food on your shelf, the inventory at your pharmacy, the perishables at the convenience store on the corner, increasingly all of it is arriving on a vehicle that nobody is driving. You do not see it because the truck looks identical to every other Freightliner Cascadia on the highway. The only tell is the sensor pod on the roof. You looked at that truck on Interstate 45 and thought you were watching a science experiment, a tech demo, a novelty. What you were actually looking at was a $906 billion industry that lost 122,000 jobs in 3 years, an average driver, age of 46, a 90% annual turnover rate in long haul, a federal regulation from 1972 that the industry sued its own regulator to work around, a custom Lidar that sees a single pedestrian at the length of 4 football fields, dual redundant steering actuators, the ancestral lineage of a desert race that started in 2004 with a vehicle that drove 7 miles before quitting, and the freight infrastructure that delivered the food on your grocery shelf this week. You are not just looking at a driverless truck, you are looking at the visible tip of the supply chain that fed you on Tuesday. And every 18-wheeler you pass on a Texas highway, from now on, you will glance at the cab. And if you think one truck driving across Texas with nobody inside is strange, wait until we get into why the trailer behind it spends half its life completely empty.